Hi everyone, welcome back to Lace's Library. So today's another RPG horror story. This one is by Juego Cero. I'm hoping I say that right. I don't know. It'll be up on the video. DM tries to force past campaign on new players. Let's see how this one goes. My name is Cero. I'm sorry if that's not actually how you say your name. I apologize. And a few months ago, I had an experience that started out annoying and turned truly horrible. Due to my personal and work situation, I usually look for TTRPGs to play online. In January, I applied for a D&D game with a steampunk and zombie theme. That seems kind of cool. The DM seemed fantastic, and when my application was accepted, I was really excited. The DM, who I'll call Douchey, that's hilarious, contacted me on Discord to get to know me better, which is pretty common when you're looking to play online. During our conversation, I noticed he might be on the spectrum. I don't mean to judge anyone, but there's some context here for later. At the time, the conversation seemed to go well. He said he liked my answers and would be delighted to have me in his game. I was happy to be accepted and excited to meet the other players. After that, a few days passed until the game date arrived. It was me and 3 other players. Myself, another guy, and 2 girls. This was the session 0, where we were supposed to define characters, backstories, and things like that. At least, that's what we thought. The players and I hit it off as soon as we met. Only a few minutes had passed, and we were already making jokes among ourselves. Douchey, strangely, remained silent while we introduced ourselves, until he just said, "Okay, choose which character you want to play." What is this, a video game? The other players and I fell silent for a second. You see, when I submitted my application on the site where I was looking for players, it said I could create my own character. In fact, one of the players commented on that, saying they already had an idea of the character they wanted to make. Douchey said that was an option, but that these characters were already at an advanced level and had magic items. But if we played one we made ourselves, we'd have to start at level 1. We didn't think much of it at the time, so we decided to see what characters he had. We noticed there were 5 characters, 2 rogues, a paladin, a cleric, and a barbarian, all with their race and equipment already chosen, and curiously, with very elaborate backstories, a page per character. I usually choose wizards, so none of them appealed to me, nor to any of the other players. So we told him we preferred to create our own characters. Douchey started making loud mouth sounds, and then said with a dismissive tone, "Whatever you want, your loss." The gesture was a premonition of what was to come. We spent the rest of the session silent. We would discuss possible stories of how our characters could meet, but he didn't pay attention to us. I think at some point I could hear him watching TV in the background. In the end, the last thing he said was that he'd see us in a week, and that was it. He didn't tell us how the game would start, or what he expected from us. One of the players is autistic, and mentioned that she noticed similar patterns in Douchey, so she told us not to get too bothered by him. Maybe that's just how he communicates. By the way, I'm not an expert on these topics or anything, I'm just recounting what we talked about at the time. Well, the first day of the game arrived, and we were excited to start. That's when Douchey said, "Okay, as you recall, you were in the Lord Festus's cave when..." Suddenly, he started telling the story that our caves were already in a cave, facing a lord who had escaped our invasion of his castle. The other players and I were surprised. We had never done that. We even joked that we didn't remember our characters doing that in session 0. Again, Douchey used that arrogant tone. It was all in the backstory of the pre-made characters. We mentioned that since we chose to make our own characters, we hadn't read those backstories, and that he never told us we had to. He just said it was all fine, to follow the story, and everything would make sense. We decided to play along. The thing is, as soon as we started the game, we tried to pretend our characters were meeting for the first time. My character approached another saying, "Yeah, I'm just a mercenary looking for that Lord Festus's bounty." Immediately, Douchey got agitated and said, "That's not how it goes. You faced him in the castle, and you already know each other." That felt awkward. We tried to roleplay getting to know each other a couple more times, but he would interrupt and say, "That doesn't make sense. You already know each other." Despite everything, we kept playing for a few minutes. Curiously, we failed all the first rolls we made, because, for some reason, The skill level was higher than that of our characters. We didn't know why until the first battle came. There were 3 beasts that destroyed us in a couple of turns. It was literally a TPK in the first session. When we asked Douchey why, he replied that the cave was level 8, and those beasts were that level. One of the players got annoyed and asked him why he put us in that challenge if he knew we were level 1. He just said, "If you had chosen the characters I showed you, this wouldn't happen." That's definitely a railroad. That annoyed all of us. We asked him if he wanted to do it with pre-made characters. Why didn't he tell us it was mandatory from the beginning? He said it wasn't, that we had the freedom to choose. Then we asked him why he started the story this way if it wasn't mandatory. That's when he mentioned, because the story is already advanced. At this point, we decided to ask why all of this was happening. It didn't seem like he wanted to play the campaign he told us about. He told us the reason for this was that he had started this campaign 2 years ago, that he played with other players who had made the characters Douchey wanted to give us. The thing is, for whatever reason, he could no longer continue playing. But he wanted to continue the story, as not finishing it affected him greatly. At this point, he sounded increasingly uncomfortable, as if talking about this negatively impacted him. One of the players asked for a moment to speak with us separately, and he went to the bathroom. The player told us that Douchey had some kind of compulsion, that perhaps he needed to continue the story because not doing so affected him. She told us that, at least for this session, we should go along with him. By the time he came back, we agreed to play with his characters. By that point, the mood had really dropped, but we didn't want to play on bad terms with him, or end on bad terms with him. I chose a cleric because I wanted to play someone who casts spells. Suddenly, Douchey started making those uncomfortable mouth sounds. Again, he said that only a woman could play that character. I told him if it bothered him, I'd just change the character's gender. He blurted out a resounding no! Not wanting any more problems, I just said, okay, fine, and switched to one of the rogues. We started the cave again. About 20 minutes passed when Douchey said something like, "Alright, rogue, in this section of the cave, it's just you and the cleric. Anything you want to say to your beloved?" Even on a Discord call, I could feel the other player and I exchanging a look that said, "What?" Apparently, both characters were lovers in the previous game. I usually don't have problems with character romances if the players consent, but the thing is, the other player is aromantic. In fact, she had mentioned in session 0 that she didn't want her character to have any romance. Douchey started pointing out that it was part of the role, because it was in her character's backstory, and that they had lived for a long time to be together. The player insisted that she didn't like that, and I agreed with her. He couldn't impose that on someone. Douchey kept getting more upset, saying that's not how role-playing works. That's not how the characters behaved. The other player got very annoyed, to the point where he raised his voice at Douchey. "Look, the problem is that we're not those players. If you have an advanced story with new players, why don't you just start the story over and let us play our own way?" That agitated Douchey. He started yelling, "I don't want to! It's my game, and you don't want to play it the way I want!" The call didn't have video, but we started hearing him throw things, and I could swear I heard some glass break. Throughout that process, we only heard, "It's my game! My game!" Suddenly, we heard someone enter his room. It was a feminine voice, perhaps a woman in her 50s. We heard her trying to grab him and ask him to calm down, and he just kept yelling, "My game!" Everything happened very fast, but at one point, all of us collectively left the call. Well, after that, the players and I stayed in contact. Thanks to one of them, we managed to play another steampunk-themed game. And with a different DM, of course. To date, we've been playing for several months. I'm writing this, remembering that story, because recently, Douchey contacted one of the players, saying he felt bad about what happened, and that if we wanted to play with him again, we could. To this day, she doesn't want to reply to his message. And honestly, neither would I. I hope Douchey has found a healthy way to finish his story, or that he started a different game. But yes, that's my RPG horror story. At least the one I'm willing to share, for now. Okay, so that was a little bit of a wild one, despite how short it was. I do kind of feel bad for his name being Douchey, because I guess in some way it does seem like he might have had some autism, and that ending the campaign but not like ending it, like ending the story, might have been really overwhelming to him. But he obviously didn't react the way he should have. And I am happy for the players because the players, despite this, stayed together and are still playing together, which is kind of a good ending to this. And what do you all think? How do you interpret what Douchey was saying, and do you think that they did the right thing with Douchey? Let me know down in the comments, and if you like RPG horror stories, please like and subscribe so you can see more. Bye!